and welcome to the Plenty of Positivity podcast. I am your host, Courtney Beck, and today we have a very special guest, Ryan Cass. Ryan is a senior manager responsible for leading the 787 Skill Enhancement Center focused on operations and quality workplace coaching at Boeing. He is a founder of One Day. He is also a podcast host for Win Today and a co-founder of Champion Tribe. So it is my absolute pleasure and honor to welcome Ryan Cass.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Very thrilled to be here with you, especially on the last Monday of 2024. What a great way to end the year and create positive impact for people in 2025.
Absolutely, Ryan. And I'm so thrilled to have you. I have to let our listeners know. So, Ryan and I met on LinkedIn, and I'm a person, of course, of building community. And I remember you knew somebody that I had interviewed, and that was Stephen Pivnik. And I always love to reach out to people who either comment really nice things or, of course, just engage with the content. So there I was. I saw Ryan there and we connected that way. So LinkedIn is super powerful as far as building community. So I do have to give a shout out to LinkedIn. But nevertheless, Ryan, I'd love to start with maybe an introduction and a background of yourself.
Yeah, definitely love LinkedIn as well. By far the best social media outlet, I believe. But we could talk about LinkedIn all day. So what I want people to know about me, what I believe is most important to know about me, you made me sound pretty cool with some of the things I get to do. But what I believe is most important, Courtney, is that I'm a vessel of service. I love to give back, and my purpose is to help inspire people and teach people how to build systems that enable them to reach their goals, break systemic trends of adversity, and create a desirable course for life. And that's fueled by the greatest gift that I was ever given as a young child, and that is growing up in a family with a systemic trend of alcoholism. That's really what has created what you see from me today, the things that you listed between the podcast and coaching and community groups. All of that and what I do today stems back from pain in early years that has been transformed. And that's something that I love to help create for other people, that we can transform any negative experience into something positive and use it as fuel and create so many lights in this world. And that's me in a nutshell. And on top of that, and also fueled by the early days, I love to also inspire people to push their bodies and minds further and harder than they believe possible. And I do that through running ultra marathon distances and competing in grueling endurance events to show people that we truly are capable of anything when we've got the right mindset to fuel us.
No, absolutely, Ryan. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. We're certainly going to get into, of course, all the community building. And I'm really curious about the endurance sports too, as well. It seems like that's certainly been quite the journey for you. But I had to start with a very powerful quote that you have on your LinkedIn. And I'd love for you just to elaborate on it. I used to be upset at the world until I learned that nothing happens to us in life. Things only happen for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe that's been one of the most powerful discoveries that I've made in life, and want everybody to be able to resonate with in some way, shape, or form, is that nothing in this life happens to us when we shift our mindset to only find and see the light in anything. So growing up, as I mentioned in the beginning, that my fuel today is growing up in a family with a systemic trend of alcoholism. And that what that meant is that from the earliest days that I could remember, Courtney, I was often playing the middleman between my parents. My father really struggled with alcohol, would often come home late from the restaurants that he ran after partying with coworkers and coming home very drunk, and that would then ensue some pretty chaotic scenes at home. And I would show up to school late. I would lie to teachers. I would lie to friends as to what was going on and play off this picture that everything is great and the outside picture matches the inside picture. And but really I was just upset at the world, wondering, why me? Why does this have to be in my household? Why do I have to be the one that is up until 2, 3, and 4 in the morning making sure that my parents stop fighting and my sister doesn't see what's going on? Why am I the one that's answering the door to the police coming over because of how loud it's getting at the house? And it wasn't until later into my teenage years, really college years, when I started studying personal development and connecting with people that have such powerful mission statements and vision and purpose, that I realized, holy smokes, like all of that was giving me the resources so that I can serve people today. And all of that is what gave me my why. And
Mm-hmm.
I've recognized that a lot of people, everybody's got something or a chain of events that has happened in their life. And you
Mm-hmm.
can make a choice. You can either, ah, man, look at these things that have happened, and be upset and justify your reason for not doing good or not performing or not being who you want to be, creating the life you want to live. Or you can
Mm-hmm.
choose option B, which is you can flip the script on it and
Yeah.
recognize how it's grown you and the tools that it's given you. And you can ultimately see it as something good and something that happened for you. So I thought all of these things were to me, was upset, learned a
Mm-hmm.
lot, connected with the right people, did a lot of homework, studying, inner work. And it's like, wow, there is an abundance of good in this world when we flip our mindsets.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for sharing that. I certainly went through, we spoke about this a little bit before we had a conversation, of course, before we had jumped on here, but I went through something very similar with my mother and alcoholism. And I could certainly relate to the very challenging times, let alone, like you said, almost that sense of it's happening obviously at the household, but you're trying to keep it together on the outside too, as well. Like growing up, like you said, just friends, people ask questions, or, later on, I think what was very difficult is even when my mother did pass away
Hmm.
from that, it was difficult at first to move forward, especially as a young girl without a mother. But you are so right in saying that, like, when bad things happen to us, and the perspective that we're able to take, I'm very strong in my faith, and that really helped me as I would move forward, knowing that she was, upstairs, so to speak, looking down, but then also that I was not going to let that be like the end for me, but to help others, to obviously now, build community, allow people to have that sense of hope and
Hmm.
support. So my point in saying all that is I could certainly relate to some things that you have gone through, but I really do think it's so important to have that positive mindset and that perspective to help you move forward through those difficult times, because like you said, everybody has a story, everybody has something that they've overcome in life. So, Ryan, on a positive note, I would love to hear just your experience. Obviously, the foundation being laid at the Citadel, where you got your bachelor's degree, you majored, or excuse me, finished this degree cum laude. So, big congratulations to you. What an honor. And I'm just curious, in college, there's so many lessons that we could learn. So, is there maybe like one or two that really stands out to you that would, of course, help you move forward to gain and garner all the success that you have present day?
Absolutely. So the Citadel, for those that aren't familiar with it, it's a small military college here in Charleston, South Carolina, and lessons from there I could pull out a lot, but what it really gave me, they call the Citadel a leadership laboratory. And that's because in addition to your academic coursework, all cadets, regardless of if you're entering the service or not, because it's a public institution, you still go through ROTC, and the school still functions as the academies do. So everybody's wearing a uniform. There's leadership and rank structure, physical fitness training, everything, the whole nine yards. And as I had several leadership roles there, one thing that it really taught me, and that I use day in and day out, especially in corporate leadership roles, is that ownership, taking ownership and recognizing that as a leader, anything that goes well or not well on the team, you are responsible for. Therefore, if something goes wrong on my teams, and I lead 52 people at the Boeing company right now, it's not on such and such person. If someone made a mistake or did something that didn't reflect well on the team, then myself as the leader, that is on me. And it's my responsibility. It's my opportunity to go and fix it and understand what can we do better? How can I help serve people so they don't make those mistakes anymore? I've found that time and time again, and not being afraid to take ownership and stand in front of a room and let people know that, hey, I made a mistake. And the reason why this happened, it's not because of this person, it's me. I'm the captain of the ship. That's something that has served me very well. And that's something that was part of the leadership laboratory at the Citadel. The second thing is that you can learn something from anybody, and everybody matters regardless of what
Yeah.
title or position they have or don't have, whether they're at the top of the chain or the bottom of the totem pole. At the Citadel, everybody has a voice, regardless of, again, if you're the senior private, which is a senior cadet that doesn't have rank, or the freshman that is basically a robot. Everybody can offer you something. And I think about that day in, day out. When I'm in the corporate world, I tell people at Boeing, especially when we're walking around the factories, I introduce them to mechanics, especially new kids fresh out of college, and I tell them that mechanic you just met is the most important person at this company. It's not the vice president, it's not the CEO, it's not the manufacturing business leader, because everybody wants to meet the executives. But who's really making things happen day in and day out are those troops that aren't at the top of the chain, and they are to be valued and respected and connected with, and we should learn from all of them. So those are the two things that I got from there that I carry with me on a daily basis.
Oh, that's wonderful, Ryan. And I could certainly attest to the ownership, like you said, kind of that sense of accountability, as well as treating everybody equal. And I must say, My father taught me that lesson. I remember right before I got into pharmaceutical sales. And it was this idea. He was in medical sales, but understanding when you walk into that office, whether it's the individual at the front desk, whether it's a janitor cleaning up, or it's the physician, of course, in that case, which of course I needed to get a signature from, everybody knew why you were there.
Hmm.
However, each person could play a part, and I'll never forget, I mean, there was multiple occasions when in fact, if they were just flooded with patients, it maybe was not a good day, people leading up to that physician would at least let you know, hey, I don't know if this is going to be a good day to be here right now. Maybe you want to come back later in the day. And the point in saying that is that you just never know how somebody could even help you,
Mm.
to always give people time, respect that they deserve in each of those positions that they hold, no matter what they are, no matter rank they are either. So when you were talking about that, I was thinking back to my days in corporate America. But no, and the sense of accountability, I think, is so important. I mean, even when I was in pharmaceutical sales, very limited, if even zero science background. I was in advertising communication. But when you're out there, obviously physicians have multiple years of experience and you learn very quickly what you don't know. So to be able to swallow your pride and say, you know what, those keywords, I do not know that, but I will
Mm.
certainly get back to you with an answer.
Hmm.
You learn very quickly. So I do agree. I think those are excellent lessons, and of course, college could teach us so many lessons. I could go on and on about college in general, but you mentioned working at Boeing. So, what made you go in that direction to work for such a prestigious company like Boeing?
Mm. I was the kid that was flying toy airplanes around the house, and I would use the floors as airports and the countertops as runways. Would probably, looking back, got yelled at for not cleaning my airplanes up and putting them on the kitchen counter, maybe even in the sink. But I've always loved airplanes. But really, what led me down that path, Courtney, is I had a mentor in college that really helped guide me in narrowing down a top 5 list of companies that I'd like to work for, and really got me to think about what is really important to me, what would I like to be doing, and what are things that what are things that are important to have in a company that you may want to work for. I believe that it's with anything in life, asking those, again, those exploratory questions of ourselves, even when we're thinking about our goals, can create so much clarity. So I knew that it was important to me to work for a company that had global presence and a company that manufactured a tangible product. So I didn't want to be selling software services, nothing against those things, but I'm a touch and feel and see guy.
Yeah.
And it's got to be a product that I'm passionate about as well. So I was at the time interning with United Technologies, specifically with Otis Elevator. And while that was a great experience, I couldn't see myself being passionate about elevators, but
Yeah.
I loved airplanes. So that's what led me to pursue Boeing and go back to handy dandy LinkedIn and connected with someone out in Southern California, Art Guerrero, who I still have never met to this day now, 11 years later. But this is the power of connecting and goals. I reached out and he graciously mentored me through how to set myself up for success and ultimately land into a very competitive 2-year rotation program, thanks to being proactive on LinkedIn. But that's what led me down the path of pursuing Boeing, and it's been a fun and challenging 9.5-year ride. As the world knows, over the last 5 years, it's been challenging, but what better way to learn and grow as a leader? Again, flipping the script, like, look at all the things that are happening for you and for us right now.
No, that's incredible. And you just mentioned it, but you have been there at Boeing for 9.5 years, and you have climbed the ranks through, I believe it was roughly 7 positions. So, how did you climb the ladder so quickly? What type of lessons maybe did you learn along those 9.5 years to make it to that senior manager position?
I joke around, Courtney, and say that I believe everybody just gets tired of me after about a year and a half. And they pull my name out of a hat and they're like, oh gosh, okay, Ryan, go over there. And that very well could be it. But in all seriousness, what I really do believe has led to that, and what I
Mhm.
tell people, especially early career folks that want to know
Mhm.
how to set themselves up for success. One of the first things that I do when I'm working for a new leader, as I've worked for quite a few over the last few years, is I share my goals with them
Yeah.
and where, this is what I want to do. This is where I see myself going. And then back that up with extreme effort, consistency, and service to people. That,
Yeah.
simply put, is what has allowed me to move up rather quickly and assume a lot of responsibility. Now, if I break that down, here's what really led to one of the biggest breakthroughs that I had is coming into the company. I thought that I wanted to be a finance and strategy CFO, cool, sexy title. And that changed on day one when I walked into the St. Louis manufacturing facility for the first time and saw the F-15 Strike Eagle fighter jet up close. And I thought, man, the heck with finance. I want to be next to this bird. I don't want to be making charts. I want to run a factory. I want to do something in operations and be as close as I can to this product. So, what did I do? I wrote that down. I started spending as much time as I possibly could in the factory, learning from the engineers, from the people that are working on the product day in and day out, and acquired knowledge and then shared that with all of my leaders that I supported. And in 2017, when I was still in a finance role here in South Carolina now, the leader I was working for knew that this is what I wanted to do. She was also very people and growth focused, and a door opened up to serve as the chief of staff for our vice president of operations on the 787 program. And from there, every leader that I got to work for from that, and that gave a lot of exposure. I've shared with them the piece of paper, what I'm working towards. And then it's literally been, hey, Ryan, we just found this opportunity that aligns to what you want to do. Hey, you should check this out. You should check this out. I've only applied formally for, I believe, two of those jobs. And, 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 and I say that as encouragement to other people, Courtney, not, hey, look at me, I just wrote stuff down. That when you have a written plan, when you share that with people, and when you operate in alignment with that,
Yeah.
you can create so many things in life, whether it's in the corporate world, in your personal
Mhm.
life, your fitness journey, your family, your relationship. I don't
Mhm.
have any complex formulas, but
Yeah.
writing down my goals and making that known to people that I support has carried me tremendously in life, and I'll keep doing that as long as I live.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, what a journey so far in Boeing, like I said, to make it to the senior manager position. Um, what type of leadership lessons you've been in that particular position for 2 years, roughly, I think maybe a little bit over 2 years. What is something that maybe stands out to you that you have learned? Maybe it is just your personal growth. That's some things that you've learned, or just working with a team at that high level of leadership?
The most difficult thing for me, and that I've continued to make a priority, especially as we go into the new year, is recognizing that at this level, my job is more about ensuring that the managers that report to me
Hmm.
have everything that they need to run the day-to-day business and successfully.
Right.
And I'm really supposed to be operating more in, okay, when we get to 6 months from now, 1 year from now, a couple years from now, how well are we positioning ourselves and spending more time in the future, and not completely removing myself from the day to day, because I can't. That's a, I will say that is something I will put that limitation on myself, because
Okay.
I love to be out there with the people, and they see me every single day. I walk all the factories every single day and connect with my people, but I'm learning more and more that as you move up the leadership ladder, it's more about providing very clear direction and delegating to your leaders so
Mm-hmm.
that you can focus on the path ahead and clearing any obstacles that maybe they're not viewable now, but they will be in 6 months and a year and 2 years from now. So we need to make sure that we're set up. And I'm still wrestling with it. And one of the ways I'm experimenting with it is giving more vague direction to my leaders that are highly capable and high performers, and giving them point A and point, let's say, D, and
Wow.
having them solve for B and C, versus what I want to do and what I'm resisting the urge to do is, all right, here's A through C, just get us to D. So it's quite a challenge, but something that I'm really pushing myself more and more into 2025 is let let leaders lead, let
Yeah.
runners run, and I'm here to clear obstacles and, again, just set the framework for 2026, 2027 and beyond.
Well, that's incredible. And, Ryan, like to hold such a prestigious position within corporate America, of course, at Boeing, you also have a company, a business, One Day. So that's, of course, I mean, this is just one component of it, but you already spoke about it with goal setting. But could you just elaborate on maybe why you started One Day and what you ultimately hope to achieve with One Day?
Yeah, why I started One Day. So going back to the beginning, I know that there's a lot of people that have lived through or gone through or are living through
Mhm.
similar situations to what you and I have experienced. And there's a lot of people that are living in those moments, or have like, one day I'm going to break the chain, or one day I'm going to launch my own business and inspire people. And one day this, everybody's got this one day thought in their mind. And what I've learned is that when you have the right systems and habits and discipline in place, that everybody can create their one day moment. And that's why it's spelled one day, because when that day comes, it's a win. And I launched that to first as a passion project. It's like, hey, how can I help my former self and really teach people the power of goal setting? And that has evolved, and where it's going is that will eventually become my full-time adventure. And I use One Day to speak professionally at schools and organizations, and also have a coaching and mastermind venture through that. I just launched the Unshakable Discipline course and mastermind group a few weeks ago, that are all under the One Day umbrella. And then there is the Win Today podcast as well. So it's a culmination of a few things, and it's intended to, again, help people create their one day moment and vision, and ultimately inspire people to establish a foundation for sustained success. So I teach people everything that I've learned over the last 14 years now, that have served me well, and I believe can serve others very well, regardless of their current circumstances.
Oh, that's truly inspirational, Ryan. I want to take a step back. So, you talk about, of course, writing goals down, goal setting, short term goals, long term goals. But what type of advice could you give somebody like when you were first starting out? And like you said, you started this as truly a passion project. As you write it down to actually pull it out into the physical realm, as I like to say, how did you make it reality? Like, how did you muster up that confidence to then take it and to really help people?
As far as my goals, or as far as like the vision for one day and then of evolving it into what it is now?
Yes, good question. So, just the company and the business
Ah,
itself. So, one day.
yeah. So, whew, well, and we haven't gotten into running, but I'm sure we probably will. But I run a lot, and running for me serves as meditation, and it also serves as my visualization time. So for me, running is an opportunity to turn my mind off or think about what the future is going to look like. And I believe that the more time we spend viewing our goals, but then visualizing our future and creating it in our mind, that we will make it a reality, and you'll convince yourself more and more that, hey, this thing is happening. Like we're doing it. And our minds are so powerful, Courtney. So for me, when I first launched it as a passion project in 2018, and then speaking to a class for the first time through that, I was like, wow, this was literally just turned, this has now gone from just a post, which took a lot of courage to put out there, to now you've been invited to a school to speak for free, and you got a taste of it. You got to touch the dream, as I like to say. You got a little taste of what it's like to just put something out in the world, and now something has happened. So what happens if we keep doing it and keep sharing your passion out there in the world, regardless of what people might think? What else can it lead to? And by remaining consistent on that and pushing aside the thoughts of people might be laughing at you, or this isn't good enough, or well, this person's podcast or this person's coaching and speaking program is way bigger, pushing all of that aside, it has now then catapulted. And I remember getting the first then paid speaking opportunity, and then it's like, okay, well, let's see about coaching. Okay, coach for free. Oh, someone actually signed up for it. Okay, let's put a little price tag on it. So it's been these little experiments that have just been not afraid to put out there in the world. And it doesn't always hit on day one or on the first post, but when you're
Yeah.
consistent with it, great things eventually will happen. And when you're acting and operating in alignment with whatever your vision may be, and allowing yourself, creating the capacity just to think about, like, what can this really become? And I often think about now, Courtney, like we're not far away from the big stages, from 100 plus people being in the mastermind group, from the podcast jumping from top 3% to top 1%. Why couldn't that happen? The only answer to that is, the only reason why something wouldn't be able to happen is because I or someone allowed themselves to think that it's no longer possible, or that they allow the limiting beliefs to come in and stop them from hitting the post button, from putting good stuff out there in the world. So what I'm getting at here is I kept running experiments, and that's what I would encourage anybody to do. It's going to start small. Everybody wants to go from 0 to 100 and skip 1 through 99, or a lot of people do, but 1 through 99 is where all the growth and beauty resides.
So true.
And embracing that process, I look forward to maybe being on here in a year from now, 2 years from now, like, hey, now look what it's become. And here's why. It's literally just what I said there, and not stopping and staying consistent and putting the voices aside. We have so much power.
That's so true. And I reflect back, and when you talk about that first post, I'll never forget it. Just even starting to build the idea. It was almost like a year ago. I had just graduated and I started thinking about everything in January, but then fast forward to June. I had the video ready. I'm about to like post it. And you're right. You're like, I mean, so many emotions, or you're like, okay, hold on. Am I really ready for this? No, 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 no. Maybe tomorrow. No, 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 no. We're doing this. So many mixed emotions. But I think it's taking that first step. And you mentioned something I wanted to ask you about, because I think no matter what business it is, starting something new, just like you said, you're not going to be great at it at first. But how did you block out, if it was opinions of others, or if you heard certain things being said, and not to compare yourself even to others? How did you remain focused on your goals?
A few things. One, and I believe that this is something that will help anybody push forward, is when I look at why I'm doing these things. So connecting it back to why is this really important? Why this is really important, and why growing a podcast and a coaching community mastermind, it's not important because it sounds cool and it would be awesome to have 1,000 people in this group, because that's what a lot of people have done. It's important to me because this is something that I've experienced to help end generational trauma in my family, and can help end generational trauma in a lot of people's families. My reason for doing this is so strong that
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what people think, because this is literally like at my heart.
Yeah.
And I believe when something is at the heart level,
Mhm.
someone would be far more likely to move forward on that, regardless of what the world says or thinks, because it's your heart. So that's one.
Mhm.
Now, I will say that even with that, yes, the voices will always visit us. The voices visit the most resilient people in the
Yeah.
world, and the doubt visits the most resilient, disciplined people in the world. What I've learned to do with those thoughts and those doubts, and what I encourage everyone to do, is ask yourself in that moment, if you ever have a thought of, man, I don't want to, well, if I put this podcast out, it's not going to be even close to what Courtney's podcast is, or nobody's going to listen to it, or people are going to laugh at me. Here's the question to ask yourself in those moments: what makes that true? What evidence do you have in that moment that supports that claim? Most of the time, you find out that you're just making something up and you're creating a false narrative. And then the last thing is having an army of support. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of mentors and people I've connected with that have done the same thing, are doing the same thing, or
Mhm.
have been in the same boat, and ask them what they've done and what their experience has been. What have you done with the voices? All
Yeah.
of them say probably what you would say to somebody else, but it's tough for you to do yourself. Go
Yeah.
for it anyways, right? It's so easy to tell somebody else that, but it's so difficult at times to tell ourselves that. Why?
Mhm.
Because, well, now it's me. So now all those thoughts, or whatever people think about me, or whatever the heck is going on in my mind, it all comes to me. So what would you tell somebody else? Hey, Courtney, put it out there. I'm rooting for you. I want you to win. I want people that are listening to win, and winning, however they define winning.
Yeah.
So those are the three things: is having a very strong why that's going
Mhm.
to drive you regardless of what people may think, question what makes those thoughts true, and then have a strong support system and people that have been there, done that, or people that you know are going to root for you, and listen to them. You'll never meet a hater doing more than you in life.
That's a really good saying. The one thing When you were speaking, that I was thinking about like how to overcome that self-doubt, because without a doubt it does seep in sometimes when you're taking that next step or you're adding something else. I always thought about when I was thinking to like literally launch the podcast, okay, if I decided not to do it, well, Court, would you in 5 years put yourself like 5 years out and reflect back? Like if you
Mm,
did not do it,
mm,
um, how would you feel in that moment? And for me, I think that's the way I've always want to live my life is as you, God willing, I'm 80 years old, in a rocking chair. I could look back and I could at least say, I tried it or I went for it,
yeah.
because I think living with regret would be like the hardest thing.
Mm,
Um, Especially with starting businesses, if it is your passion, but you're a little bit too worried about what others say. Like, I mean, just to fast forward in life and to think, gosh, like that held me back. And now I don't have a chance to really go after it. So I just think it's always so interesting how people remain focused on their goals and just that strategy. I think it's so important, especially today, because there's so many distractions in life. There's so much noise that we could tune into, but to remain focused on the goal. And you said it before, like in the beginning of the conversation, but that sense of consistency day in and day out, working on your projects, even if you're not putting stuff out, like if you're working on things behind the scenes,
mhm.
just to keep going. So, as far as success goes, though, Ryan, I must say, you have a top 3% podcast. So you're in the top 3%. So a big congratulations. And I'm just curious, like, what are maybe some tips for those maybe starting a podcast that you could maybe offer them?
Mm. I love what you had just mentioned before that. I want to add one thing to that is that
Sure.
I wouldn't want anybody to meet the person that they could have become. And
It's
I
a good
believe
one.
that's the greatest fear in life is you don't want to go through this life and then I'm going to answer the podcast question because there may be someone listening right now
Mhm.
that is thinking about launching a podcast and they may have the same fears that you and I did. Nobody might listen. It's not as big as Joe Rogan's or Diary of a CEO or whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
We go through this life and that person doesn't launch a podcast and then you your life is coming to an end because all of our lives will come to an end.
Mhm.
And don't know what everyone believes in, but let's say everyone believes in the big man upstairs. And they say,
Mhm.
all right, Courtney, you lived this great life. And here's this person that you had inside you this whole time that, oh, they had a top performing podcast that impacted millions of people all over the world, that inspired countless women. But you were too scared to launch it. We can't take that time back. So for people that now get into the podcast that may want to launch one, which I highly encourage,
Mhm.
biggest thing, start, take messy action. Don't worry about crafting the perfect questions, the perfect interview. Just literally find somebody, or you don't even need to find somebody. Say you're going to launch a podcast, put a name on it, and go on Riverside and start recording and have a conversation with somebody and put it out there and commit to a schedule, whether it's every Monday or every other Monday, whatever the case may be, and
Mhm.
stay consistent to that schedule, because what that's
Mhm.
going to do is it'll attract more people to your show. And what I've found now by doing this for going on 3 years, when shows are really consistent, then media agencies and people that their sole job is to book their clients on other
Mhm.
podcasts, they will reach out to you and pitch people to
Mhm.
your show. And it'll eventually become a point to where you're not doing all of the guest outreach, which is what you do in the beginning. And now you get to pick and choose who comes on your show. What my
Mhm.
favorite stat with podcasts is that only 10% of them, 10% of podcasts in the world, and there's millions of them out there, only 10% make it past 10 episodes. So if you do that for 10 weeks, you'll be a top 10% podcaster. And don't stop from there. But what I've found is it's a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to eat you. Nobody's going to come through the screen and eat you. Like, I've had people on my show that have been on Joe Rogan's podcast, have been on the big ones. And I've at first was like, oh my God, this person has been on Joe Rogan. What the hell are they doing with me? Like, I don't even have a cool studio yet. And you know what I found, Courtney? It's the same thing as having a conversation with you right now. What is it? A
Yeah.
conversation that can help people grow, that gets to, that we get to share our collective insights. And that's that. So let's remove the fear from it. But that's the best thing that I would recommend to people. And hopefully what this does is removes fear that some people may have. Like, you're talking to somebody, you're likely talking about something that you find important to you, and put it out there and keep putting it out there. And it will grow. It will grow, and have fun with it. And it's fun to eventually look back on the early episodes. I look back, sometimes I still listen to the early ones that I had. I'm like, who is that guy? It's so cool to see your growth journey. And the only way you can do that is by continuing to put stuff out there and stay consistent with your mission.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Looking back, like I said, I started it in June and you learn so many skills. Like I don't even know how many years I stopped counting. I was in school, but what's so interesting is through all those years, I never educated myself on any type of video editing,
Yeah.
interviewing skills. I didn't major in journalism. And I think to your point, like when you do have a message, just to like go after it and you develop so many different skills through podcasting. Of course, if it's, strictly audio or if it's video too, of course, being able to visually see somebody, focusing on how to speak confidently in front of a camera. That was something I'm still trying to overcome too as well. But you're right. I look back at the like first couple episodes and my guests have been fantastic, but I would purposely make myself listen to them and hear myself. And, Ryan, it's like, oh my gosh, did I really publish that like on my behalf? Like I said, the guests have been fabulous, but you're right. Like to really force yourself to listen, to understand like where your starting point is and how you're slowly like developing those skills, gaining confidence along the way. And you've mentioned it before, but like just repetition, that consistency, I think really builds that confidence, ultimately speaking in front of a camera. And, just having, like you said, at the end of the day, when you think of that, that's such a good point. It's a conversation, it boils down to a conversation about something that you're passionate about or sharing, obviously, to others to help them. So, I did want to move forward because you've mentioned it a little bit, but I am fascinated by endurance sports. I have never participated in endurance sports. As a matter of fact, I think the complete opposite. Um, Gymnastics is, I think, not think it is at most, you're performing for a minute 30, whether that be on, the floor exercise or the beam, balance beam for others. But what made you go into this direction to really challenge yourself in endurance sports?
I've always loved competition in sports. It's been a big part of my life. And my first taste of it was through wrestling. And that's what got me into running. And then I found running to be the activity that allows me to shut my mind off from everything that was at the time going on at home. I was like, man, I love this running thing. And when I graduated from the Citadel, now I'm an adult in the corporate world, I wanted to be able to compete in something. And to my knowledge, there's no, adult wrestling leagues or anything like that. I loved other sports. I still love playing golf and whatnot, but I wanted something that I really thrive on intensity and a competition that really like will come down to, in many cases, just what you got up here in your mind and what's in your heart, because there's going to be a moment in time where the body the is hurting and it comes down to just what's inside of you to keep going. And so that led me down the road of marathoning. And then I was like, well, what is this ultra marathon thing? Like, people run 100 miles. And then I start questioning, well, what's the hardest thing that I can go and do? So that led me down the path of going out to qualify and eventually compete in the Boston Marathon and run a few 100-mile races. And now, most recently, I ran 150 miles to raise money for families that currently have a loved one battling cancer. So it came from a curiosity and wanting to still compete in something to
Mhm.
stay involved. And I believe it's a great way to grow. And now it's evolved into continued curiosity. Well, we ran 150 miles. What else is the body and mind capable of? And let's be a vessel to help others be able to push themselves further and harder than they ever believed possible. And I get to do that by running experiments on myself and then showing people, hey, like, this is, I'm not just going to tell you, you can go and push yourself hard. I'm going to push myself extremely hard and be an example that, hey, you can do anything that you want and that you believe possible.
Mhm.
And here we are, just running these crazy distances now.
I was just going to mention, I definitely want to get into the charitable work that you're involved in. But how did you how did you even train for I can't even fathom it, 150 miles? I mean, did you have a coach alongside of you? What did that look like, right?
Yeah. So when it comes to those distances, one may think like similar to a marathon, where in a marathon, which is 26.2 miles, it's typical for most programs to have some 20 to 22-ish, 23 miles training runs baked in there.
Right.
And, you can usually accomplish that within 2.5-ish hours or so, 2.5 to 3.5 hours, depending what paces people run at. It's
Sure.
not something that takes literally an entire day like an ultra marathon does. So for 100-mile run or 150, there is no, all right, yeah, I'm going to go out for an 80-miler today and go train. It's a different ball game. It's more about being able to sustain a manageable pace at a low heart rate for a very long period of time. So in this case, it's about getting very good at being able to run, 20 to 30 miles. Really, my longer training runs were 20 miles just back and forth on a bridge on a very slow pace, to where if I wanted to, I could do it the next day or a few hours later. So getting the body to the point to where if I do it once, it's not going
Mhm.
to have me wobbling or sore for the next few days. You're ready. You can do it at any point in time. So that's really the prep process. Like, there are no 80-mile training runs, and then tons and tons and tons of body weight work, lots of lunges, squats, single leg work to get the leggies ready. And I've worked with one of my good friends, Leonard, who is a personal trainer, and he's helped me build a lot of lower body strength over the years. But and then also, I have a lot of friends that are ultra marathoners, and again, the who not how principle. One of the easiest ways to learn how to do something is find someone else who's already done it or is doing the thing, similar to starting a podcast. Find
Mhm.
someone that has a podcast. So connected and got advice from some of the best. And yeah, none of them said go on an 80 or 90-mile training run. So get your body and mind to the point to where 20 miles seems effortless at a low pace. And then come that race day, you get to do that many times over again. And that's the key.
That's incredible. And the one thing I've noticed just throughout our conversation is this focus on like never being afraid to reach out or to ask questions, like that sense of mentorship or coaching, like if it is obviously in training, in sports and endurance sports, obviously in your case. But I think that's like a lesson I've learned throughout the years is to never be afraid to ask questions throughout your whole life. Like
Mhm.
you're never going to know everything.
Right.
And I think that's what's so powerful about just, never stop learning in different areas of your life and to reach out. And I do think mentors are extremely powerful. If they've been there, if they've done that, just like you mentioned, you can maybe save some time from making multiple mistakes just by learning from them. But no, I mean, congratulations on just all of that. You mentioned obviously that whole 150-mile charitable run, but I do want to like really get into the charitable work because it speaks volumes about your character, Ryan. So, what does charitable work mean to you, and why did you get into it just so heavily involved in it?
It means the world to me. It means everything. And that's how I describe myself at the beginning. Like, there's cool things you might see about me in my bio, but I truly, truly believe, Courtney, that the best gift any of us can give is to give back
Yeah.
and give back to something that has your heart in some capacity.
Yeah.
And that I can't stress enough that if there's one thing I wanted somebody to know about me, it's that I'm a vessel of service. So
Yeah.
with that, what that looks like for me today is, one, I love to give my time to serve the younger version of me. My absolute favorite thing that I do is I'm a big brother through Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I've been involved in that organization for 6 going on 7 years now. And it's the most rewarding thing when you can help create an impact in somebody else's life and help them achieve a goal or break a systemic trend of adversity in their family. Like, that's what brings me the most joy. And I love working with the youth because then get to show them earlier than I knew that, hey, this tough stuff you're going through is serving you well. You might not see it now, but I'm going to help show you how it's serving you well now so that you can use that as a gift now versus discovering it later. And also, every quarter at my house, I host a mastermind dinner. And the way that works is I invite a bunch of people over, tell them, don't bring anything other than an open heart, a willingness to learn and give and grow. And we honor a different nonprofit every time. So I have the founder and CEO come speak, and I provide the dinner and everything, and tell people, if you feel led, please contribute to the nonprofit that we're honoring today. And that's led to over 14, no, roughly $20,000 being given back in the local community here in Charleston over the last couple of years. And then the last two things I do is with running. It's bigger than me. Another reason why I do all these endurance events is to honor families and support families that have a loved one battling cancer. That's why I did this 150 miles crazy run back and forth on a bridge. And next year I'll be running across the state of South Carolina with the intent to raise over $10,000. And then I have a scholarship fund for students that are going to college that are committed to ending generational curses in their families, called Be the First One Scholarship. And we've awarded over $13,000 to 8 students, and that'll be coming back in 2025. I remember being a new college student without any scholarships or college funds, and it's not fun to pay off student debt. So I love having the opportunity to, again, serve the younger version of me, and also be a catalyst for change, because by doing these things, hopefully it inspires at least one other person in this world to volunteer, to give, to start a charitable cause, to do something that's bigger than them. And I believe that's how we make this world a better place, Courtney.
Well, Ryan, your story is truly inspirational. I mean, my gosh, just everything that you've been through to your professional career, obviously, all the leadership positions that you held and currently hold, as well as, of course, you just wrapping it up with all the charitable work that you do. Really, like I said, it just speaks volumes about your character and what you're able to give back. I truly feel like there's nothing more fulfilling than serving others. When you were speaking, I think about even sometimes like when I teach, I always share not only those success stories, because of course that's where we want to keep everything, but those failures or those mistakes that we made along the way, just to help ensure that students, like I said, before with the whole mentorship, that they don't make those same mistakes and they could, achieve success much quicker than I, finally did if it was, finishing a degree or, obtaining certain positions in life. But no, truly, truly inspirational, Ryan. And I would love to wrap this podcast up with a wonderful positive note, a positive phrase, or even quote if you have one.
Well, thank you so much, Courtney. And going back, one thing you mentioned, I heard you say that you are trying to be better on video and camera.
Yeah.
And what I will say is you're not trying, you're doing it. And you've done an amazing job. So I'm going to start off this positivity with you and a shout out to you that you're a pro. You were so well prepared. You did your homework and you've created this powerful conversation, had awesome transitions, and don't let yourself think that you're not doing an amazing job, because you are. And we all, even the best of the best, always have room to improve, and we're going to be our own biggest critic. But the first thing is a shout out to you, an appreciation, and thank you for this opportunity. What I'll leave people with, as this is now a new year that we're embarking upon, is that you already have all of the tools you need to succeed and win. And you can create a life of abundance and fulfilling experiences by being clear on what you want, writing it down, and building a system around it. And the formula doesn't need to be any more complex than that. And as we're in this new year, make it an effort to help at least one person, because we can never truly measure the impact of our efforts, because we never know what that one person may do. They may help 5. Those 5 may help 10, but it starts with one. Changing the world in 2025 starts with helping one person, and you have everything you need to get it done.
Oh, well, thanks so much, Ryan, for that. And thank you for coming on to the podcast. I had mentioned it before, but it really is an honor. Just your kind words, your encouragement. As I mentioned before, you are a top 3%er with podcasting. So to hear that come from you, it does mean a lot. And, as you mentioned, there's always room for improvement, but I really do. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. You've achieved an immense amount of success, and I know you're headed for even more success, not only in 2025, but many, many more years to come with all that success. So thank you once again, Ryan, for being on the Plenty of Positivity podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Courtney.